Sarah Martinez never imagined that her skill with a kitchen knife would one day save lives on a battlefield. Growing up in a small Texas town, she learned to cook from her grandmother, who taught her that food was love served on a plate. After high school, Sarah joined the Navy not as a combat soldier, but as a culinary specialist. She wanted to serve her country while doing what she loved most, feeding people. The Navy sent Sarah to advanced culinary training, where she learned to prepare meals for hundreds of sailors under the most challenging conditions. She could cook a perfect meal on a ship during rough seas or in the middle of a desert with limited supplies. Her fellow sailors always looked forward to her shifts in the kitchen because somehow, she made military rations taste like home cooking. After 3 years of service on various naval vessels, Sarah received an unexpected assignment. She was being transferred to support a special operations unit, Navy SEALs. The assignment came with a warning that the work would be dangerous and secretive. Sarah would be cooking in forward operating bases, sometimes very close to enemy territory. The food she prepared would fuel some of the most elite soldiers in the world during their most critical missions. Sarah accepted the assignment without hesitation. She had always been curious about the legendary SEAL teams and wanted to contribute to their success in any way she could. Her commanding officer briefed her on the security protocols and reminded her that she would be working in a combat zone. Sarah signed the papers and prepared for a completely different kind of naval service. The flight to Afghanistan took nearly 20 hours with multiple stops. Sarah carried her personal cooking equipment in a specially designed military case, along with her standard-issue gear. As the transport plane descended toward the air base, she could see the rugged mountains and desert landscape that would be her new workplace. The heat hit her like a wall when she stepped off the plane. The forward operating base was smaller than Sarah expected, surrounded by concrete barriers and razor wire. The mess hall was a simple metal building with basic cooking equipment that had seen better days. Sarah quickly realized she would need to be creative with both ingredients and equipment to keep the SEAL team properly fed. She met the team leader, Commander Jake Thompson, a tough man in his 30s with intense blue eyes and a firm handshake. He explained that the team would be conducting dangerous missions behind enemy lines and needed reliable nutrition to maintain their physical and mental performance. Sarah assured him that she would take care of the team's nutritional needs, no matter what challenges arose. The SEAL team consisted of 8 highly trained operators, each with specialized skills in combat, explosives, communications, and medical treatment. Sarah quickly learned their individual preferences and dietary requirements. Some needed extra protein for their intense physical training, while others had food allergies that required careful meal planning. She made it her mission to know each team member personally. Sarah established a routine of preparing 3 meals a day, plus emergency rations for extended missions. She worked long hours, often starting before dawn to prepare breakfast and staying late to clean equipment and plan the next day's meals. The team members initially saw her as just another support person, but they quickly grew to appreciate her dedication and the quality of food she provided. The base commander warned Sarah that intelligence reports indicated increased enemy activity in the area. The Taliban and other hostile groups were becoming more aggressive, and there was always a risk of attack on the base. Sarah received basic combat training and was issued a sidearm, though she hoped she would never need to use it. One evening, while Sarah was preparing dinner, she overheard the SEAL team discussing their upcoming mission. They would be infiltrating a remote village suspected of harboring enemy fighters who had been attacking supply convoys. The mission was scheduled to last 3 days, and Sarah prepared special high-energy meals that could be eaten cold if necessary. The team departed before sunrise, leaving Sarah alone with the base security personnel and support staff. She continued her normal routine, preparing meals for the remaining personnel and maintaining the kitchen equipment. Something felt different about this mission, though she couldn't explain why. The team had always returned safely from previous operations. 2 days passed without communication from the SEAL team, which was unusual but not necessarily alarming. On the 3rd day, Sarah noticed increased activity among the base communications staff. Officers were making urgent phone calls and studying maps with serious expressions. When she asked about the team's status, she was told that communication had been lost and search efforts were underway. Sarah couldn't concentrate on her cooking duties. She kept thinking about Commander Thompson and his team, wondering if they were safe or if something had gone wrong. The base commander called a meeting that evening and delivered devastating news. Intelligence sources reported that the SEAL team had been captured by enemy forces and were being held in a remote mountain compound. The rescue mission would take several days to organize and could result in the team's execution if the enemy detected the approaching rescue forces. Sarah felt helpless knowing that the men she had been feeding and caring for were now prisoners facing an uncertain fate. She volunteered to help with the rescue mission in any way possible, but was told that civilians had no role in combat operations. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She walked around the base perimeter, thinking about the captured team members and feeling frustrated by her inability to help them. As she passed the communications building, she overheard radio traffic indicating that the enemy was planning to move the prisoners to a new location within 48 hours. Once they were moved, finding them again would be nearly impossible. Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She couldn't wait for the official rescue mission that might arrive too late. She had to find a way to help the captured SEAL team herself, using the only skills she had, her knowledge of local terrain, from food supply runs, and her ability to move unnoticed through areas where a female civilian might not attract immediate suspicion. So began planning what would become the most dangerous mission of her life, knowing that failure would likely result in her own capture or death, but unable to abandon the team members who had become like family to her. Sarah spent the entire night studying maps of the region and gathering supplies for her unauthorized rescue mission. She knew the approximate location of the enemy compound from overheard radio communications and had memorized the routes used for food supply runs to nearby villages. Her plan was risky and probably impossible, but she couldn't abandon the SEAL team members who had trusted her to take care of them. She packed a small backpack with medical supplies, energy bars, water purification tablets, and her personal cooking knife, a sharp, balanced blade that had been a gift from her grandmother. Sarah also took a local woman's traditional clothing that she had purchased in the village market weeks earlier, thinking it might help her blend in if she encountered civilians during her journey. Before dawn, Sarah left the base through a maintenance gate that she knew had a broken alarm sensor. She had discovered this security flaw weeks earlier during a routine inspection, but had never reported it, thinking it was a minor issue. Now this oversight would serve as her escape route. She walked quickly toward the mountains, following a goat path that local villagers used to reach remote settlements. The terrain was harsh and unforgiving, with rocky slopes and loose stones that threatened to send her tumbling down the mountainside. Sarah had never attempted such a challenging hike, but adrenaline and determination pushed her forward. She rationed her water carefully and stopped frequently to check her compass and map, making sure she was heading in the right direction. After 6 hours of difficult climbing, Sarah reached a ridge that overlooked the valley where intelligence reports placed the enemy compound. Through her binoculars, she could see a cluster of stone buildings surrounded by guards carrying automatic weapons. Smoke rose from one building, suggesting it was being used as a kitchen or heating source. Sarah observed the compound for several hours, noting the patterns of guard rotations and identifying the building where prisoners might be held. She saw figures moving around the compound but couldn't determine if any were the captured SEAL team members. The guards appeared relaxed and confident, apparently unaware that anyone knew about their location. As evening approached, Sarah noticed increased activity around the compound. Vehicles arrived carrying additional fighters, and she could hear voices speaking in local dialects. Her limited understanding of the language suggested they were discussing plans to move the prisoners the following morning, confirming the intelligence reports she had overheard at the base. Sarah realized she had only one night to attempt a rescue. She waited until full darkness before beginning her descent toward the compound, moving carefully to avoid loose rocks that might alert the guards. The traditional clothing she wore helped her blend into the shadows, and her small size allowed her to move through spaces that would be impossible for larger individuals. She approached the compound from the back side, where the kitchen building provided some cover from the main guard positions. Sarah could smell cooking food and realized that someone was preparing an evening meal for the fighters. This gave her an idea for infiltrating the compound without immediately arousing suspicion. Sarah waited near the kitchen building until she saw a young, local woman emerge carrying empty water containers toward a well outside the compound walls. When the woman passed close to Sarah's hiding spot, Sarah stepped out and approached her carefully, speaking in the few local phrases she had learned during her time at the base. The woman was frightened at first, but Sarah's non-threatening appearance and limited local language skills convinced her that she was not a soldier or immediate threat. Through gestures and simple words, Sarah communicated that she needed help and was looking for captured American soldiers. The woman's expression changed to one of understanding and sympathy. The local woman, whose name was Fatima, had been forced to work in the compound kitchen after her village was occupied by the enemy fighters. She had seen the captured Americans being held in a stone building at the center of the compound and had been ordered to bring them food once each day. Fatima was as eager as Sarah to see the fighters, leave her region and return to their families. Fatima explained through gestures that the guards expected her to deliver food to the prisoners after the evening meal was finished. She indicated that Sarah could disguise herself as a kitchen helper and accompany her into the compound, but warned that discovery would mean death for both of them. Sarah accepted the risk without hesitation. Working together, Sarah and Fatima prepared a simple meal using ingredients available in the makeshift kitchen. Sarah's professional cooking skills allowed her to work quickly and efficiently, even with unfamiliar equipment and limited supplies. She also prepared small packages of high-energy food that could sustain the SEAL team members during an escape attempt. As they cooked, Sarah used her knife to prepare vegetables and noticed how perfectly balanced and sharp the blade remained, despite months of heavy use. She realized that this knife designed for kitchen work could serve as an effective weapon if circumstances required. The thought of using it against another person disturbed her, but she steeled herself for whatever actions might be necessary to save her team. When the meal was ready, Fatima led Sarah toward the prisoner building, carrying food containers and walking with the casual confidence of someone performing a routine task. Sarah kept her head down and tried to match Fatima's pace and mannerisms, hoping that the guards would not examine them too closely in the dim light. They passed 3 guard positions without challenge, with the fighters barely glancing at 2 women carrying food containers. Sarah's heart pounded as they approached the stone building where the Americans were reportedly held, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether her desperate rescue mission had any chance of success. At the entrance to the prison building, Fatima spoke briefly with a guard who appeared to be expecting their arrival. He unlocked a heavy wooden door and gestured for them to enter quickly. Sarah followed Fatima into the dark interior, uncertain what she would find but committed to completing her mission regardless of the obstacles ahead. The remaining guard at the checkpoint was older and more experienced than his companion, constantly scanning the compound for any signs of unusual activity. Commander Thompson realized that neutralizing this guard would require a coordinated effort to prevent him from raising an alarm that would bring the entire enemy force down on them. Sarah watched as the SEAL team members communicated through hand signals, coordinating their approach with the silent precision that came from years of training together. Petty Officer Martinez, the team's reconnaissance specialist, positioned himself to approach the guard from the left, while Sergeant Collins moved to the right. Commander Thompson would provide backup if the initial approach failed. The operation unfolded exactly as planned. Martinez and Collins moved simultaneously, reaching the guard position before the sentry could react to their presence. The guard was subdued quickly and silently, with no opportunity to alert his companions. Sarah felt a mixture of relief and admiration as she witnessed the team's professional efficiency. However, their success created a new problem. The guard who had left for the latrine would return soon and discover his companion's absence. The team needed to clear the compound perimeter before this happened, but Williams's injured ankle was slowing their progress significantly. They had to choose between leaving a team member behind or risking capture of the entire group. Commander Thompson made the decision that epitomized SEAL team values. No one would be left behind. He assigned Collins and Martinez to assist Williams, while the rest of the team secured their escape route. Sarah volunteered to scout ahead and locate Fatima, who was supposed to guide them to safety once they left the compound. Sarah found Fatima waiting nervously near the kitchen building, constantly glancing toward the prison area, where she expected trouble to begin at any moment. When Sarah appeared, Fatima's relief was visible even in the darkness. She had prepared a bundle of supplies including water, basic medical supplies, and food that could sustain the group during their journey back to the American base. Fatima led Sarah toward a gap in the compound's perimeter wall that was hidden behind a pile of construction materials. Local workers had created this opening months earlier to move supplies more efficiently, and the guards had never discovered its existence. The opening was narrow but large enough for a person to squeeze through with some difficulty. Sarah returned to guide the SEAL team to this escape route, but as they approached the hidden opening, they heard shouts from the direction of the prison building. The missing guard had been discovered, and enemy fighters were beginning to search the compound systematically. Flashlight beams swept across the courtyard, moving closer to the team's position with each passing moment. Commander Thompson realized they had only minutes before the search would reach their location. He ordered the team to move through the wall opening immediately, regardless of the noise they might make. Speed was now more important than stealth. As their escape had already been detected, the team members squeezed through the narrow opening one by one, with Martinez and Collins helping Williams navigate the gap despite his injured ankle. Sarah went through first to assist from the outside, followed by the team medic Rodriguez, who might be needed if anyone was injured during the escape. Commander Thompson insisted on going last to ensure all his team members reached safety. As the last team members were squeezing through the opening, enemy fighters with flashlights appeared in the area where they had been hiding moments earlier. Thompson had just enough time to clear the wall before the search beams illuminated the escape route. The enemy would discover their exit path within seconds, giving them only a small head start in the mountainous terrain. Fatima led the group away from the compound using goat paths that were invisible in the darkness, but familiar to her from years of living in the region. She moved with sure footing despite the difficult terrain, occasionally stopping to help Williams navigate particularly challenging sections of the trail. The sound of pursuit grew louder behind them as enemy fighters organized a systematic search. The terrain worked both for and against the escaping group. While the rocky paths and dense vegetation provided concealment from their pursuers, the same obstacles slowed their progress and made silent movement impossible. Every loose stone that clattered down the mountainside announced their location to anyone within hearing distance. After an hour of difficult climbing, Rodriguez called for a brief halt to examine Williams's ankle, which had worsened significantly during their escape. The joint was swollen and extremely painful, making each step an ordeal that threatened to slow the entire group. Sarah offered to stay behind with Williams while the rest continued, but Thompson immediately rejected this suggestion. Instead, the team improvised a solution using materials from Fatima's supply bundle and techniques from their survival training. They created a makeshift brace that stabilized Williams' ankle and redistributed his weight to reduce pain. The modification allowed him to maintain a faster pace, though he still required assistance on steep sections of the trail. As dawn approached, the group reached a ridge that provided a view of the compound they had escaped. Smoke was rising from several buildings, and they could see vehicles moving along the access roads as enemy forces expanded their search. Sarah realized that their escape had triggered a major military response that would make reaching the American base extremely dangerous. Commander Thompson studied the terrain ahead using skills developed during years of special operations. He identified several possible routes back to friendly territory, each with distinct advantages and risks. The most direct path would take them through valleys where they could move quickly, but might encounter enemy patrols. Alternative routes through higher elevations would provide better concealment, but require more time and physical endurance. The team decided to use the high elevation route, accepting the additional difficulty in exchange for better security. Fatima knew portions of this path from her childhood, when her family had moved livestock between seasonal grazing areas. She warned them that the route included several dangerous passages where a fall could result in serious injury or death. As they resumed climbing, Sarah reflected on how drastically her life had changed in less than 24 hours. She had begun the previous day as a cook preparing routine meals in a forward operating base. Now she was leading a combat rescue mission through enemy territory, using skills she never knew she possessed and making life or death decisions that would affect multiple families. The sound of helicopters in the distance indicated that enemy forces were expanding their search using aircraft. The group needed to find concealment quickly, as their small size and dark clothing would not provide adequate camouflage against aerial observation. Fatima led them to a cave system she remembered from her youth, where they could rest safely while enemy aircraft searched the area. The final approach to the American base required the most careful coordination of their entire escape. Commander Thompson maintained radio contact with the base security forces, providing regular updates on their position and estimated arrival time. The base commander had activated special protocols to ensure that trigger-happy guards wouldn't accidentally shoot the returning team in the darkness. Sarah found herself walking between Commander Thompson and Petty Officer Rodriguez as they approached the outer perimeter. With her hands visible and her civilian status clearly communicated to the base security forces, she had removed her traditional head covering so that her face could be seen clearly by guards using night vision equipment to monitor their approach. When they reached the first checkpoint, Sarah was amazed by the efficiency of the base security response. Guards had been positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire, while maintaining clear lanes for the returning team to approach safely. Floodlights illuminated the area without compromising the vision of soldiers using night observation equipment. The base commander, Colonel Richards, was waiting personally at the main gate when the team arrived. His expression showed a mixture of relief at seeing his people safe and concern about the unauthorized mission that had made their rescue possible. Sarah knew that she would need to explain her actions to military authorities, who might not appreciate her initiative. As they passed through the base entrance, Sarah was surprised to see Fatima being escorted by military personnel, who had apparently been waiting for her arrival. Commander Thompson had radioed ahead to request asylum protection for the local woman who had risked her life to help them escape. The American military had protocols for protecting local civilians who assisted their operations. The base medical facility was prepared to treat the team's injuries immediately upon their arrival. Rodriguez's field treatment had stabilized the most serious problems, but Williams's ankle required proper medical attention and Johnson's shoulder needed professional examination to ensure that no permanent damage had occurred during his captivity. While the team members received medical treatment, Sarah was escorted to the base commander's office for what she expected would be a very difficult conversation about her unauthorized actions. Colonel Richards was a career military officer who valued discipline and proper procedures, but he was also pragmatic enough to recognize results when he saw them. The debriefing lasted for several hours, with Sarah explaining her decision-making process and the details of the rescue mission. Colonel Richards listened carefully, occasionally asking questions about specific aspects of her plan and execution. Sarah answered honestly, acknowledging that her mission had been extremely risky and could have resulted in disaster if any number of things had gone wrong. To Sarah's surprise, Colonel Richards expressed admiration for her initiative and effectiveness, rather than criticism for breaking protocols. He explained that official rescue missions had been planned, but would have taken several more days to organize and might have arrived too late to save the captured team. Sarah's quick action had probably prevented the execution or transfer of the SEAL team members. However, the colonel also explained that Sarah's unauthorized mission had created diplomatic complications with local authorities and had disrupted carefully planned intelligence operations in the region. The enemy compound had been under surveillance as part of a larger effort to map terrorist networks, and the dramatic escape had forced hostile forces to change their procedures and locations. Despite these complications, Colonel Richards recommended Sarah for official recognition of her heroic actions. Her rescue mission had saved 8 highly trained special operations personnel, whose experience and skills were irreplaceable. The successful operation had also demonstrated the value of unconventional thinking and individual initiative. In military operations, the SEAL team members were equally generous in their praise for Sarah's courage and effectiveness. Commander Thompson formally recommended her for transfer to special operations support roles, where her unique combination of skills and demonstrated courage could be utilized more effectively. The team had gained tremendous respect for the cook who had risked everything to save them. Sarah's story spread quickly through the military community, inspiring other support personnel who sometimes felt disconnected from the crucial missions they were supporting. Her example demonstrated that every person in the military community had the potential to make critical contributions to mission success, regardless of their official job description or training background. The media attention that followed created challenges for Sarah, who had never sought publicity for her actions. She preferred to focus on her work rather than being celebrated as a hero, but military authorities recognized the value of her story for recruiting and morale purposes. Sarah reluctantly agreed to participate in limited public relations activities that highlighted the contributions of support personnel. Fatima was granted asylum in the United States and eventually became an American citizen. She maintained contact with Sarah and the SEAL team members, creating lasting friendships that transcended cultural and language barriers. Her intimate knowledge of the local terrain and culture proved valuable for future military operations in the region. The rescue mission had lasting effects on military procedures and training programs. Sarah's success led to enhanced combat training for support personnel and new protocols for emergency situations where traditional rescue operations might be insufficient. Her creative problem-solving approach became a case study in military leadership courses. 6 months after the rescue mission, Sarah received the Bronze Star Medal for her heroic actions. The award ceremony was attended by the SEAL team members she had rescued, along with senior military officials who recognized the significance of her achievement. Sarah remained humble about her role, emphasizing the teamwork that had made the mission successful. Commander Thompson and his team returned to active duty after recovering from their injuries and continued their distinguished military careers. They maintained close contact with Sarah and often credited her with saving not only their lives but also their continued ability to serve their country. The bonds formed during their shared ordeal lasted long. After their military service ended, Sarah's military career took an unexpected turn when she was offered specialized training in combat operations and intelligence gathering. Her demonstrated courage and innovative thinking had attracted attention from senior commanders who recognized her potential for expanded responsibilities. She eventually became one of the first women to serve in certain special operations support roles. The cooking knife that had been a gift from Sarah's grandmother became a symbol of her transformation from support personnel to combat veteran. She kept the blade sharp and ready, though she hoped never again to use it as a weapon. The knife reminded her that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when circumstances demanded courage and determination. Sarah's story became an inspiration for military personnel around the world, demonstrating that heroism could emerge from unexpected sources when people were willing to risk everything for their comrades. Her legacy lived on in the lives she had saved and the example she had set for future generations of military personnel who might face similar challenges.